You're listening to the Anxious Scholar Podcast, a podcast for anxious scholars. If you're a high school student who can't wait to go to university, but also is kind of overwhelmed with lots of unanswered questions like me, then you've definitely come to the right place. On this podcast, I sit down with EGM alumni while they share valuable advice from this exciting journey of theirs that we have yet to take. I really hope you'll enjoy this episode and learn lots of useful information about the college application process, unis, and higher education in general. Hello, Anna. Thank you for agreeing to this interview and coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. I'm really excited to do this interview because I've never had guests who pursued architecture studies, and it's really important to talk about the specificities of the application process because it's very different from other majors like finance, medicine is its own world apart. So there's different elements like your portfolio. There's your knowledge background that you have to have in culture and history and architecture. There's interviews also that go into that and possibility to do a prépa. So we'll talk about all of this. But before, I was wondering if you could tell us a few words about yourself.
Of course. So my name is Anna. I was born and raised in Paris. I came to EJM in 6e as part of the EFL program. So I didn't speak English at all, like adaptation. And I had to learn everything in less than a year. And now I speak English, French, and have a good level in Spanish. And I'm currently a second year in the double diploma with architecture and engineering between ESTP and ESA in Troyes.
And in what school were you before you came to EGM?
I was in a public primary school in the 15e.
And so what made you want to become an architect / civil engineer? Because we'll talk about this. It's two parts of the diploma.
Yeah. Well, when I was in Terminal, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I always liked science and I wanted this to be part of my studies. But I also liked art a lot and I had done it since I was a kid, so I knew I wanted those two parts to sort of combine into my studies, but I had no idea what formations or what schools could have those two aspects together. So I looked into engineering schools and then I looked into architecture schools and I was I love the two and I don't want to have to make a choice, but I had to. And then late in the terminal year, I found this school with the double diploma and I was that's exactly what I want to do. It's those two sides combined. And so I applied and I got it and now I'm really happy there.
And when was this, in the end of the year? Because for Parcoursup, yeah. Right? You apply in May, in June?
So you apply on it on Parcoursup, and if they think that you're the right profile for them, they will ask you to come for an interview, and then a few weeks after the interview, they tell you if you're in or not.
So there's different steps, the first decision and then after the interview?
First you prepare on the Parcoursup, so you have your bulletin to send, lettre de motivation, and if you want to, you can send them a portfolio, but it's not mandatory. And then you have the interview, which is a lot about motivation, who you are, why you want to go there, and what's motivating you to come here.
And the way you found this program is solely based on research and what you found on the internet, or maybe talking to other people, to current students of architecture, maybe?
Yeah, I did lots of research because I didn't know which one to give up between architecture or engineering. And I didn't want to give up on any of them, so I was do I give up on both and do something completely different, or do I just choose one and regret not choosing the other for years? And I did Salon de l'étudiant in Paris, and I talked to lots of my friends who are already further advanced in their studies and friends of my parents, and they had no idea that this formation existed because it's quite new actually, and there's only a few those in France. And then I found it on the internet and was it's perfect. That's exactly the two combined.
Perfect. Match made in heaven for you.
Exactly.
You mentioned the Salon de l'étudiant. The school has posters advertising it in our school right now in the Terminal building. And And then, for example, did you also maybe like do portes ouvertes, visit the universities?
Yeah, when I found it, they did a porte ouverte in December of Terminal, and I went there and like I talked to the students and they all seemed like so happy, like they were all really like convinced of what they were doing. And I spoke to the teachers and like members of the administration, and they were like, you have the profile we're looking for, like this is a place for you and everything. So I was like, okay, like,
you convinced me.
I'm coming here.
And so you're doing a program in Ecole Spéciale d'Architecture, ESA, and ESTP, Ecole Spéciale des Travaux Publiques. Could you tell us more about how this, like, it's a double diploma, so how does it work? How many years does it last, and how is it separated?
So it's a double diploma, but the two schools created it together so that it's not something separated in the first 3 years. So during the bachelor's degree, it's all in the same campus, which is in Troyes, and we do like the two topics together, like really well combined together. After the 3 years, you have 4 options. Either you want to stop one of the two and do only architecture and only engineering, and that will last 2 additional years. So at the end of the 5 years, you get a master's degree in architecture or a master's degree in engineering. And if you want to keep the 2 topics, it's 4 extra years, and then you go back to Paris. So the total is 7 years, and in the end you get a master's degree from ESA in architecture and a master's degree from ESTP in civil engineering.
Do you know which one you would want to choose?
I would like to keep like the 2 topics if possible, but I know that 7 years is really long, so for now I'm motivated to do it. But if my mind changes in the next 2 years, maybe I'll change, but for now I'm determined to do the 2.
And now you've had experience like studying in Troyes. Could you tell us about like your life there, like the studying that you do, like the structure of your courses, maybe what kind of classes do you take?
Well, when they created the formation, they tried to really combine everything and not just have like the arts classes and the science classes. So it's kind of what we have, but they try to make sure that those two like combine together. So we have like math, we have physics, materials resistance, and like structure classes, but we also have like art classes, history of architecture classes, and we have 1 day each week, which is just for projects. So we create a project from like beginning to the end, and this project combines like everything you've learned throughout the week. So you have to draw your building, so you use what you've learned in your arts classes to draw, have to make the model, but you also have to think about what materials you're going to use, how are you going to build it, how is it going to stand, how is it going to last, how does it take like the rain, the sun, the wind and everything. So this project class I think really represents the formation because it combines the architecture and artistic part with the engineer side.
Like 2 roles in 1 person.
Yeah, exactly.
And I imagine you have a lot of practice since it's every week, a new project every week.
No, we have like a project every 3 months, I think, and every week we practice on it, and then we use what we've learned, and we can make it like evaluate.
Like you add on to it and then develop it.
Yeah,
and then
you develop it with time, and then it becomes like, at the beginning it's just an idea, like a shape or something, and in the end you know like how you're going to build it, how it's going to stand in the ground, how much people can come in it, like
very
all
precise.
of the
And you mentioned like that there's like physics, also math, of course. You took physics chimie and mathematics. You think it's necessary for this course, like this program? I
took math and physics because I wanted to keep it as generic as possible because I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do. But I've been really surprised because people have like come from lots of different backgrounds in my school. Like I took math, physics and option art, which I thought was like the only thing you had to do if you wanted to get into this type of school. But like I have a friend who just got out of medical school, who did like 2 years of medical school before coming here. I have another friend who had the SPSES in première and terminale, who's here with me, and another one who studied only physics in Switzerland before coming. So the profiles are very diverse actually, and you can come here even if you don't have lots of knowledge in science or in art, but they just want to make sure that you're motivated, you know what you're doing, you know like what you're putting yourself into. But yeah, you don't have to take math and physics absolutely to get in there.
So it's not the case where you already have to come with like this background. For example, in physics, there's if the person did SOS and math, I imagine, for example.
Yeah.
So you definitely feel like completely like prepared when you were doing the courses.
Yeah.
But for the other person, it's like they go over all of this and it's not an issue.
But even for the people who didn't do lots of physics, like my friend who did 2 years of medicine school, she was like far from what we learned in Terminal because she had done 2 years of study previously, but she caught up really easily, and that's what they help you to do during the first year.
And in terms of the campus life, I imagine there's a lot of like territory since it's 2 hours away from Paris and Troyes. Do you have time to do like extracurriculars, participate in clubs, maybe do some sports?
Yeah, you do. There's like I'm part of the student office in Troyes, which is the BDE, which is like the main association, but we help coordinate all of the association. There's like 8 or 9 in the school, so you can do sports, you can do art, you can do like cooking. There's like so many associations in the campus, so yeah, there's lots of time for you to do what you want other than class.
To get your mind off of like schoolwork. And an average, of course, like to give an idea, how much time do you kind of spend working, like maybe on your own, but also in classes?
Well,
if there's a lot of independent time, or like on the opposite, like in prépa where it's like just
no,
class?
it's more of like the French rhythm compared to the fac or the schools in the US or the UK is that you have lots of work in class, you have lots of hours in class, like you'll start at 8 and finish at like 4 or 6 almost every day, and you also have to put in lots of personal work. So the second year is the toughest one because you have lots of personal work to do and lots of class hours, but mostly if you work in class you can work like an hour a day or 2 hours a day at home and do well. Like it's not as hard as in prépa, but it's still a double diploma, so you have lots of work to do additionally to as if you were in like a fac or just doing architecture or just doing engineering.
Like the program is fuller, like the bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned how, like, for example, for your universities, the art portfolio wasn't necessary, but there was like for the like motivation letters, the interviews. Before we talk about like each specifically, to get into like the details of how it works, I wanted to mention that there's like the prépa that you can do during your terminal year, either like on Saturdays during the school year or during the holidays, in order to prepare this portfolio that you aren't really taught how to do in high school. Prepare for the interviews, also for the concours à venir that we'll talk about later. So I was wondering if you did it and why you chose to do it or not.
Well, I chose not to do prépa architecture, but I know it exists because the formation that I wanted to go to had an architecture side and an engineer side. And they told us, like, what we want to see is your personality, your motivation, but it's okay if we don't have lots of, like, skills in drawing or architectural culture and everything. So I thought that I didn't need to do it because they weren't expecting us to do it. But if you want to go to an ENSA, which is Ecole Nationale Supérieure d'Architecture in France, some of those schools have a very high level of expectation. So they might expect you, if you come to the interview or if you send your application, they might expect from you to know how to draw, to have some good basis in drawing, and to know a bit about architecture. So it might be a good idea if you want to go to an ENSA to do a prépa with architecture, but only for a year, I think, just to get a good base level and show them that like you're ready and you have the skills. But for my school, they didn't ask us specifically to do it. They didn't even ask you to have a portfolio, so you don't have to do it if you're considering maybe like a double diploma.
So you knew that they didn't require this from looking at their website, like in their
I went to the Journée Porte Ouverte and I asked them, and I had a contact of a student who was there, and I asked him like lots of questions, like how to get in, what do they expect from you, and everything.
So I guess we could start maybe with the interviews, which is like the last step. From what I understood, it's only one round of interview. Yeah. What kind of questions did they ask you, if you remember?
Well, I was quite surprised by the questions because I was expecting them to ask me like a bit about architecture, but it was actually really personal. Like, what do you do outside of school? What are your hobbies? They asked me, this one was quite surprising, like, who's your favorite engineer? Which is something I was like so not prepared for.
What a coincidence. I was gonna ask you the same question about your favorite.
Like, I was prepared to answer like, who's your favorite architect? But engineer, it was like really surprising. But they wanted to know mostly about me, like, what do you do? Like, what do you, like,
you as a person, what are your passions?
Yeah, exactly. What do you expect from this formation? Like, why are you here? They told me, like, I see on your application that you're from Paris. Why are you coming to Troyes? Like, are you okay with coming to Troyes even though you're from Paris and you grew up there? So they just like want to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. Like, you know, this is a double diploma. Are you okay with getting like almost the double of work from a normal diploma and everything?
Do you think it's more valuable, like it's kind of beneficial if you have extracurriculars because they ask you about your hobbies?
Yeah, definitely, because they didn't ask you to have a very like high moyenne. Like, when I went to the Journée Portes Ouvertes, they were like, normally we ask you to have like 14 in maths, but like we take people who are STD2I, people who have like 12 in moyenne. So they don't really ask you to have a very high level, but they just want to see that you're very motivated.
They want to see like why you want that, what are the reasons, and who are the people who interview you are your future teachers who study, so not like the alumni or of the university?
No, because it's quite new, this formation. Like, there's only been 3 promo from now. So yeah, the jury in the interview are like your future teachers.
And did you, you said, you prepared for it, even though it wasn't what you expected.
Yeah.
But in the end, it turned out well because you had the chance to actually like visit it and know that it was like a match for you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was really prepared. Like, I could have said like what my top qualities were, like my défauts, my qualité, my méthode de travail and everything. So I was like really prepared, and they asked me really personal questions that had nothing to do with what I had prepared. So I was kind of lost at the beginning, but you just gotta be like relaxed and show them your personality. That's just what they want to see. They don't care if you're like a top student, if you won like contests or everything. They just want to see that you like it, you're gonna like it, and you want to do it, and that's enough.
You can just be natural, and if you're sincere, it's gonna go well.
Yeah.
And in terms of maybe like a personal statement that you had to write, a motivation letter, was that part of the application? Yeah,
it was part of the application on the Parcoursup, but it wasn't something they asked you a lot about. Like, just saying, show us who you are, show us your background, what makes you want to do this. I think this was like the most important part. Like, why are you here? Why do you want to study here? And if you can like convince them, then it's enough.
It's the common questions in the Parcoursup.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's like the part with the extracurriculars also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and you could mention that you like did Spanish and art as an option.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a bonus. Like, it's just like the portfolio. When I showed them during the interview, like, they didn't even ask for it. They were like, okay, we're done. And I was like, well, do you want to see my portfolio? Because I brought one. They were like, oh, okay. Like, it's not mandatory, but if you have one, good for you. And it's just the same with like Spanish, English at EJM, or option art, or any option that you chose to do. Like, it's not mandatory, but if you've done it, like, good for you. And like, I would advise you to do like option, extracurriculars, and show them that you're really interested in this, other than just schoolwork.
It's a good bonus, definitely.
Yeah.
And so how did you do that during your term in that year? You kind of took initiative, maybe did it with some friends, like the projects, or you just did it on your own, like sketching and.
Well, I had done the portfolio that I showed them during the interview was like artwork that I had done from like my whole life. There were drawings I did in like college, paintings I did during the confinement. It was just like also projects I did in option art. It was like everything I had done for the past like 5 years. I just brought it together and did my portfolio. It wasn't even an architecture portfolio, but they didn't care because I had like a group of paintings that I did during the confinement, which was really focused on like shapes and colors in it and everything. And I showed it to them and they were like, oh, there's a good like focus and shapes in here, so that's good. So basically anything you do, you can show it to them and they see like who you are, what you're interested in, like what you produced before coming here, and they don't expect you to have already like architecture drawings, because who has done architecture drawings like in terminale before? Like, unless you know that's what you want to do and you do a prépa or something, like no one has like architecture drawings already prepared to go in a portfolio, and they don't even expect that from you.
And they won't even know how to do it if, like you said, they didn't do the prépa and have the idea of like how to really do like a professional portfolio. How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. It was like, do I fake my portfolio and like spend a whole weekend drawing buildings in my bedroom and then put it in my portfolio and be like, oh, that's what I've done my whole life? And I was like I don't even know how to draw buildings, so I'm not gonna do it, and they don't expect you to know how to do it.
So it's like really the fact that you were genuine and sincere that showed in the interview.
Yeah, that's what they like, that's what they want, and they know that they're gonna teach you everything. So they don't care if you've never like drawn a building, drawn like an architectural plan or anything, and you can tell, like the students can tell, because when we all got into première année, everyone was kind of nervous, like we've never done this before, how are we gonna like do actual plans and like nice drawings? And then the first project you do, you realize like it's not that hard, but the drawings are not that good either. And I can see it now when I reflect on the first projects I did. Like I thought it was so hard and I spent so many hours doing it, and now I look at it and I'm like, this is so bad. Like I could have done the same thing now in like 10 times less time. And now you do like drawings that are so much better, and you don't even see how much progress you've made unless you look back on your old projects.
And it's good that they make you not just learn the theory, but put it into practice so you can see how it evolves.
Yeah, we do like a little bit of theory, but most of it is practice. And I think that's really good, because you get to see how much you can evolve, how much you can do. And yeah, the progress you make is so fast. Like you go so fast, it's amazing.
Could you tell us maybe about like one of your favorite projects that you have done over this time, and how you did it, like the process that goes into that?
Well, I think my favorite project was the last project I did last year, which is on my portfolio. It's called L'Eco, and it's a project, it was a group project I did with my friends, and I really liked it because we had like a lot of reflection on like the inspiration we're gonna take for it beforehand. And yeah, I think overall it was something quite different from what you'll do the rest of your career as an architect. And that's like the fun part about the studies, is that you can really experiment, and like for your project you can design buildings that you know you're never going to do in your life as an architect. So that was fun. We also had the first project of the first year, which we had to go introduce to the maire of Troyes, because it was like the mayor's office who asked the school, like, okay, we want to do a kiosk, like we want a kiosk in our city, so you can ask your students to design it, and we'll choose like the best one from the class and we'll maybe build it. So this was really fun. And then we went to the mayor's office to introduce it, some of the board and everything, and they eventually chose it, and they chose mine. So I'm still waiting for it to be constructed. Thank you. So it should be built someday. But you know, that's the part I like, is that it's really like tangible. Like, you know, you have a project, they'd be like, okay, this is where we want you to build it. And we would go there with the class and like visit the place, so we would really know what it's about and where it is before starting imagining something that's going to go nowhere. Like, this is really, it's real, like it's tangible. And that's what I like about the projects class.
Because you're in Troyes and it's outside of Paris, so there's the territory, and you guys can go out there, see, like you said, like where are the trees, what kind of land is it on,
yeah, exactly.
Like, what is it made of, is it flat, like...
Yeah, they would give you the address, and they're like, okay, this afternoon we're gonna go there, so you can see, look around, how are the buildings, where's the sun, where are the cars, like the parking spaces, parking lots, and everything. So you can really like imagine your building into the city, and I think that's nice.
And we can actually put it, it's not like a mock thing, it's really putting yourself in like the shoes of an engineer, of an architect, and even the aspect of like presenting it to the mayor. I imagine it's also a part of the job, because you have to present your project. You mentioned how like you know in your studies you can create things that you wouldn't be able to create in your career, because you have to like agree with the people that you can really build it, and the people, and I don't know, your clients have to like the design and everything. So
yeah, exactly.
It's really exciting stuff. It's very creative. Like even if like the scientific part, it's very creative, very artistic.
Yeah. And they have a third part, which I think is really interesting because you mentioned presenting it to the mayor's office. There's like a third part of the degree, which is more like soft skills. So we have a technique de communication class to really like present your project, like learn how to speak. We have English class as well, which is not English like EJM, but it's still English class. We have portfolio class where the teacher teaches you how to do a resume, cover letter and everything. So they really train us to be able to carry out a project from the beginning and the architect part, the conception, to the end. How are you going to build it? Where is it going to go? What materials are you using? And then after that, how are you going to present it to your clients, like communicate and be able to make sure like every step of the way goes okay.
They guide you through each step and you really feel prepared and I imagine like relaxed and happy about it. And just to come back to the like kind of the application process and before going to university, you mentioned in your alum profile that you did the Concours Avenir. And I just wanted to ask you like if you could explain kind of what it is and if it's mandatory and how it worked out in your case. Give us an idea of what it is.
Okay, so Concours Avenir is kind of like the concours you get at the end of the prépa, where depending on your score, you get different schools to accept you, except you do it after your bac. Concours Avenir is for the engineer schools in France, and there's three main parts of the concours. So mathématiques, second one is science, so you can choose between physics, sciences de l'ingénieur, and SVT also. And the third part is English. So it's a QCM and it's negative points. So the national average is usually kind of low, and depending on the score you have, you get accepted into or not into some of the schools of the concours. And that's mandatory. If you want to go to these schools, you have to do the Concours Avenir, and your score tells you if you can or if you can't go to each of the schools.
So it's not mandatory for each school, and for yours it wasn't?
No.
Okay.
It's just for a few of the engineer schools in Paris and in France globally, like got together and decided to have this Concours Avenir as like the application system and how to enter those schools. So everyone has the same exam and everyone except for the science part, but globally everyone has the same exam, and that's how they decide who they're going to take, only based on the score.
And in terms of preparation, it's really your level of like high school, physics, chimie, math. And so did you prepare a lot for it?
Well, I prepared a little bit for it in math, because if you do math expert, you have like a little advantage for the exam. But globally, it's the same program as your terminal program. So you're studying for your bac, so it's the same as studying for your bac.
And did you do math expert?
No, I didn't. I chose not to because I wanted to take option art, which I thought was a good idea for what I wanted to do after terminal. And I decided to take option art instead of math expert because I thought it would be too much and I wouldn't have like time for my extracurriculars outside. And I don't regret it at all. Like it wasn't a barrier for me in the application process, and I was able to catch up on math class after. So it wasn't necessary for me.
Yeah, especially if you had the speciality, like the higher level, it was enough. Yeah. And you mentioned like the extracurriculars that you did. What kind of hobbies did you have, activities that you did outside of school during high school?
Well, I did mostly dance and music. I did play the guitar, which is completely unrelated to what I studied, but they just wanted to like know what you like and make sure you're enthusiastic about something. That's like the most important part. When they ask you about your extracurriculars, they don't really care like what you do. They just want to know like that you do something and you're passionate about something. So that's what I did, and I had lots of bénévolat I did in several associations, and mainly tutoring for families for free.
Tutoring in all kinds of subjects?
Yeah, I was tutoring a girl in CE2, so primary school is like all subjects together. Yeah.
And do you have a chance, like the opportunity to continue some of those hobbies like dance or guitar in university?
Well, not really. That's kind of the problem with Troyes, which is still a small city, is that you don't have that many opportunities as in Paris for extracurriculars. So I'm still doing guitar, but on my own. And I stopped dance, but now I'm doing like sports, like to the gym when I can. Like I try to keep myself like doing things outside of school, but it is more complicated when you're outside of Paris to find like extracurriculars.
But sports is really important, even like for your academic performance.
Yeah.
For your mental
Plus,
health.
double diploma can be like really stressful, and you have lots of work. So it's important to find something like sport activity to balance it.
And without meaning to kind of copy the same questions that you had in the interview, I still wanted to find out if you had like a favorite, not engineer in this case, because I'm not really familiar with them, but if you have a favorite architect.
Well, I don't know if he's like my favorite, but I think since the beginning of last year, there's like 2 architects which were like my main inspirations and whose work I really admire. I'd say Mies van der Rohe and Norman Foster.
And can you tell us why you like them?
Well, I think for Mies van der Rohe is because the planning is really like different from what you usually see. Like where you live, like the buildings you live or have nothing to do with the spaces that he created. And I think it's really like different and innovative, and that's what I liked about it. And for Norman Foster, actually, I didn't really know lots of his work until last year. And I realized that most of the ideas I had in project class and like what I wanted to do was really close to what his work was and what he had done. And I visited the exhibition about Norman Foster last year, and I realized that it was really close to like the things I liked and what I wanted to do in project class without even knowing that it had existed before. And so yeah, I think it's like the style that he has is really close to what I like in architecture. So yeah, I think that's why he's my favorite.
To go back to your time at EGM, there's a question I asked to all of my guests. Who was your favorite teacher back in high school?
I'd say I have like a top 3, not in order, of my favorite teachers. I would have to say Monsieur Auquier, who was my French teacher when I was in première, and Monsieur Juan Thomas was my Spanish teacher for almost all of my years at EJM, because they have like this very like human side to them. It's not just like a teacher, they're like closer to you than just a teacher. So I have to talk about those 2. And I think for like the passion that he brings into his class, I have to say like Mr. Briggs. He was like my history teacher when I was in 6e, but I never forgot like how much he was into his class, how much passion he would put, and I think that's what made him also a great teacher. So I think those 3 are the 3 teachers that I would remember from EJM.
And do you have a piece of advice that you would give to graduating students of EGM?
Well, the one advice I would give them, which from my experience, is like be aware and be honest. First one is like be aware of everything that you can do around you. Like don't only focus on going to the US or going to the UK. Just find what you want to do. Be aware of what you want to do. Go to like the Salon de l'Étudiant. Ask questions around you. Make research so you can really know what you want to do. And then you can make the best decision possible. And the second one is be honest like with yourself. Because for a long time I was like, okay, maybe I want to do like only engineering class or engineering school, or maybe I'm going to go do le Bachelor de l'X in Polytechnique because that's the only thing I knew in France. But if you're honest with yourself, and I was honest with myself, I was like, no, like that's not really what I want to do. Like I'm just wasting time trying to find something that my parents would like me to do, but that's not really what I want. So you have to be honest with yourself, what your level is, how much work you're willing to put into your studies, because I wanted to go to medical school at the beginning, but I was like, I know that I don't want to put this much effort for 10 years, for a big period of time. So if you're honest with yourself, like you can already cross out like so many options. So I think it's a combination between knowing what's available for you and knowing what you really want and being honest with yourself that's really gonna like allow you to find the best option possible.
And last question, probably the most difficult one, is how do you define success?
I think success is like globally, people have the same definition, like surface definition of success, which is reaching certain goals. And for most people, those goals are like having lots of money, having a nice house and a nice family, and then you've reached the success you can have. But I think this is like this, it works, but it only applies for like long term. And I think to me, reaching success is like knowing yourself so well that you can set your own goals that differ from like the big image of success. So you can set your own goals on short terms, so you can keep reaching your goals your whole life. And those goals you have set for yourself are more personal because you've like achieved a knowledge of yourself that's allowed you to set the goals that you can reach and you want to reach on the short term, which allows you to be your whole life successful because you've reached everything you wanted for yourself on the short term. That's how I define it.
Well, thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure talking to you, and
It was
I
a
want to
pleasure.
thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in on this episode of the Anxious Scholar podcast. See you in 2 weeks for the next interview, and don't miss out on any additional information on our Instagram @The Anxious Scholar.